Woo! You know I gotta hit you with a little something musical. You know what I mean? Today's topic, something that I used to, not only I used to do. I don't even want to say struggle with. Something I used to do was compare myself to others. Comparing yourself to others. That's something that we really want to stop doing. Comparing ourselves to others. Okay, and we're going to talk about why. Comparing myself to others. Comparing yourself to others can be the most self-limiting and pointless thing that you can do. Okay? Comparing yourself is the main source of your biggest insecurities and prevents the kind of self-worth and self-esteem that is at the back of all real success. That dreaded feeling of not being good enough. Ooh. That dreaded feeling of not being good enough has its roots in comparing yourself and stands in the way of your success from the outset. Even if you manage to achieve outwardly success in spite of comparing yourself, it can never be accompanied by the inner peace that comes with an unshakable sense of self, free of any need for comparison. Man, I tell you, I used to have that really bad. Because, we want to compare ourselves, like using things as a measuring stick. But here's the thing. Everybody's journey is different. Everybody's on their own path. So for me to compare myself to somebody else's walk or journey or path is only gonna, it's not gonna do anything for me. It might seem like it in the short run, giving yourself something to measure up to, compete with, but you're never gonna be fulfilled doing that. Never. Because once you surpass whatever measuring stick you put, now what are you gonna do now? Well, you gotta compare yourself to somebody else, and compare yourself to somebody else, and compare yourself to somebody else. So you're never truly are gonna have inner peace by doing that. When really your only opponent is you. When you look in the mirror, that's your only opponent. Your only goal should be, let me just see if I can be better than the person I was yesterday. Right? Let me compare myself to myself. Brooklyn, what was you doing yesterday? Did you increase that? Did you expand? Did you do a little bit more? That should be your own measuring stick, because whether you do or you don't, you're still going to be one with yourself and complete and whole. Right? We look to external things to try to find value. It just talked about not being good enough. I used to do that. I had that really bad. The feeling of not being good enough. I carried that with me from relationship to relationship, from job to job, in sports. And of course, we can trace the root seeds all the way back to childhood if you want to go back that far. Because most of us as adults are just looking to resolve childhood issues anyway. But once we realize what it is, it's like, look, we got to stop. Because only you can give yourself value. And once I sat down, was like, man, who are you? Like, what type of person do you want to convey? Do you want to communicate to people? And I wrote down the positive qualities that I wanted to communicate, and I acknowledged the ones that are not so positive. And I worked to rid myself of those and take on other characteristics or other qualities that I deemed to be worthy. And then once I was complete in my foundation of what that was, I started to exemplify that. And more importantly, I wouldn't allow anybody to treat me less than what I thought my own value was. Because here's the thing, if I set my value for myself, right, and I deal with somebody who tries to treat me less than, and I continue to connect with them, then I'm not saying that my value is what I said it was. Does that make sense? So if I'm declaring myself to be a respectful person, that's one of the values that I'm placing on myself, and then I go interact with disrespectful people, then in essence what I'm saying is I'm not worthy of the respect that I claim that my value is, because I'm dealing with these people. My responsibility to myself is to turn my attention away from those disrespectful people so that they know that that's not happening with me because of how I value myself. And you can do that with anything when it comes to, you know, people taking advantage of your time, of your resources, of your kindness, whatever it is. If it doesn't measure up to what your idea of it is, then turn your attention away from that situation. Because if you stay there trying to convince that situation of that person that you deserve a certain level of respect, they're never going to give it to you. The way you prove to yourself that you deserve better than what your experience is currently being is to turn your attention away from it and continue to seek out that which matches the energy that you're giving off or the value that you've set for yourself. Okay? A brief history of comparing yourself to others. Comparing yourself is really just a bad habit that is likely to have started as far as back as our school days or even further. Things like school grades, appearance, and sporting achievements often determine a child's popularity and hence his or her self-worth, right? So grades are tied to self-worth, self-esteem. Ooh, so-and-so's getting an A. What are you getting? So you comparing yourself. Accomplishments. So-and-so they made the basketball team. You didn't. You're comparing yourself. Right? So all of those things, I don't think society as a whole really understands the collateral damage that it produces from those type of things. But that's what happens. And so little kids are growing up because we place such an emphasis on winning and losing as opposed to competing in the game. Okay, that's important to, and I don't mean to go on a tangent, but that's important to understand. Participating in the game is the win. Okay, winning or losing is the challenge of the game, but it doesn't determine your worth or your value, right? Because nobody will play a game that you won all the time. So it's the challenge of winning and losing is why we play the game, but playing the game, you're already ahead, you're winning. But that's never really explained to people or to children. So it's winners and losers, period. If you come in second place, that's last place, right? No, that's not the case. The challenge of the game is decided by winning and losing. That's the challenge. That's why we play. Because if we lost all the time, we wouldn't play. And if we won all the time, we wouldn't play. So the challenge of the game is winning and losing. That's why we play. Playing the game sets you apart from everybody else because you're winning just by playing, in my book, at the very least. Things like school grades, appearance, sporting achievements often determine a child's popularity and hence his or her self-worth. As adults, such outward appearances are simply replaced by grown-up equivalents like money, material possessions, and so on. Right? Cars, jewelry, clothes, the woman that you got on your arm, the guy that you got on your arm, the house that you have. Right? We're using those things to give us worth and comparing ourselves to other people. Ironically, the most popular kids on the block are likely to be the ones who have the biggest need to compare themselves as adults because they came to depend on the good opinion of others and on the ego boost of being first or the best from a very young age. And that's probably where I got it from because I was one of them know-it-all, straight-A students, president of the chess club kids. And then when you not getting that in certain areas, you know, you're fiending for it. It's almost like a drug. Comparing yourself is a roller coaster ride. Comparing yourself to others traps you in a roller coaster ride on which your self-worth is flung around by the opinions, words, and actions of others. Even when you do feel better than others by comparison, the strength you gain is a temporary ego boost. We spoke a little bit about that earlier. Distinguishing itself as authentic inner power. Once the ego boost begins to fade, as it will, so your insecurities resurface, thereby re-triggering your need for outside reassurance that sends you on a futile search for inner strength in the one place you will never find it, outside of yourself. And so the ride starts again. I mean, look at some of our greatest competitors. Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, guys that you hear stories and they're so competitive, comparing themselves 5 championships, 6 championships to LeBron James, 5 NBA, like that's why those dudes when they retire, it's hard to put down their sport because the adulation is addictive. The praise that they get from people of how good they are is addictive. So when they're not scoring baskets anymore, or for a boxer, you're not, winning, then you stick around way longer than you should because you don't have that inner peace. You don't know your value outside of the thing that you've been applauded for your whole life. So that's where that dynamic comes in. So some of our greatest entertainers, our greatest artists have identified with the adulation that they get from people. So when that career is over or there's a lull in their rise, right, that's when you see things happen, behavior changes, people do some wild stuff, right? It's not about judging them, pointing the finger, because at least they had the courage, to go after the accomplishment to begin with. I applaud you. But what if we could go after those things with a knowing, with an inner peace that me going after these accomplishments doesn't give me value? It feels good to do it because that's why we do anything anyway. It's for a feeling that it's going to give us. Why do we want the relationship? Well, it's a feeling. Why do I want the job? It's going to feel good. The house, the money, the car, like all of those things, we want it because it's going to feel good, not because it's going to define us. Okay? The debilitating need for approval. If you compare yourself to others, you're likely to find that you also look to others for their approval. Needing the approval of others makes you second guess yourself and your decisions. It drains you of any sense of self and leaves you never quite sure of who you are and what you really want. The good opinion of others may feel good in the short run, but it can only leave you feeling bad in the long run. Someone else's stamp of approval can be likened to an ink stamp on your skin that is quickly washed off with the first sign of rain. Whoever you need to stamp you owns you. Right? So if I'm, as an actor, I'm looking for the academy to validate my work, and it takes them years to do it, and I'm constantly trying to prove it, look at me, look at my work, and then I win. Right? Thank you, appreciate this validation for all the years, right? And then you do another project, and then now you're not validated for that one or that one, and now you're chasing that validation. Look at me, y'all just approved of me last year. How can you not approve of me now? What's wrong with me now? Right? Those things are external. So we don't want to look outside of ourselves for value, for our self-worth, for our self-esteem. Right? Hopefully, you grew up in an environment that planted the seeds of proper self-esteem, proper self-worth. But if you didn't, you have to give that to yourself. And you're able to do it because know thyself, know thy true self. Thy true self is connected to God. We were all made in the image and likeness of God. Everything is God. So that's what I want to put my lasso on and hold on to. Let that be my guidepost. Is that's my true essence, my true being. Is I'm made in the image and likeness of God. I got that. I don't need approval from anybody else. If I stay in alignment with those tenements, I'm winning. Okay? Comparing yourself fuels your insecurities. Those unwanted feelings of not being good enough, of constantly needing the approval of others, of inadequacy, of resentment towards other success, and of envy, to name but a few. I'm going to read that again. Comparing yourself fuels your insecurities. Those unwanted feelings of not being good enough, of constantly needing the approval of others, of inadequacy, of resentment towards others' success, and of envy, to name but a few, are all the result of one thing: comparing yourself to others. You can never quite feel good enough if your good is defined by the achievements of others. You can never quite approve of yourself if that approval depends on the opinion, words, or actions of others. You can never quite feel adequate when you place yourself on a stepladder of adequacy, with the more adequate above you and the less adequate beneath you. You can never quite be genuinely happy for the success of others when, by comparison, that success is greater than your own, thereby making them greater than you. You can never quite admire others' strengths when those strengths are the yardstick for your weaknesses. Hey, I used to be so guilty of that, right? Because we live in a capitalist society. Competition, right? To get ahead, you got to step on somebody, right? That's kind of how we've been bred as a society. So it's going to be tough to look at somebody and watch them achieve and not compare yourself to their achievements, right? In this society, we want to know how old people are, what they do for a living, what you drive, where do you live, what school did you go to. All those things are used to measure somebody, to compare them to something or to some idea, some standard, right? So I was very insecure about that, right? So-and-so is 29 years old, they're married, they got 2 kids, they got a good, man, I'm 29, I don't have that. Something must be wrong with me. Wrong. There's nothing wrong with me, and there's nothing wrong with you. Everybody's walk, everybody's path, everybody's journey is different, right? We live in a very abundant universe, right? I've talked about this before. You can't count the number of breaths you take in a day. You can't count the molecules that make up the ocean. You can't count grains of sand on the beaches of the world. It's too many to count. The world is full of abundance. So if I can accept that premise, when somebody achieves something, then I can applaud that achievement. Even if it's something that I strive to do and I haven't done it yet. Like, I can applaud them because them achieving it allows me to know that it's possible. I can never say that I can't do it because I just saw somebody do it. Their achievement should fuel me, should motivate me, it should inspire me, not make me jealous, make me envious, crabs in a barrel. Well, if you make it, then that means I can't make it, so let me hate on you. Let me gossip about you. Right? That's what we see a lot. That's what the images that we get pumped in our heads. But that's so far from the truth. It's an illusion. The world is abundant. Opportunity is abundant. Money is abundant. People are abundant. There's 7 billion people on this planet. There's a lot of people. Okay? So we don't want to compare ourselves. We want to understand that everybody has their own journey, their own path. Comparing yourself breeds mediocrity. Okay? Ironically, when people compare themselves in an attempt to judge their own success, they set themselves up for nothing more than mediocrity. Using others as your yardstick places a limit on your success. Few people dare to compare themselves to the truly successful people, and those who do usually look to successful people as a source of inspiration. In contrast, most people are quite satisfied with comparing themselves to their immediate circle of friends, colleagues, neighbors, and acquaintances with little consideration as to the true nature of their success. Comparing yourself to others limits your success to the success of the person you are comparing yourself to. Right? So that's what we do. Right? I should be comparing myself to Oprah. Right? But we don't compare ourselves to Oprah. Oprah's so far gone that she's just a means of inspiration to aspire to be like. She's a conglomerate within herself. She's a brand. Right? That's something that I aspire to achieve. So I'm inspired by her. I look for her interviews and her talks and read her magazines and her books and watch her Super Soul Sundays. And any person, for that matter, that's really doing it big, like, they're a source of inspiration. Right? So you're not walking around comparing yourself, hating on Oprah, but you'll compare yourself to the dude that's equivalent to you on your level. Like, now it's a competition because there's somebody you can see. They're in your sight line. Right? But that person is not the measuring stick of success. There's way more successful people than the people that we actually compare ourselves to. So that's what they mean by it can breed mediocrity. You're actually lowering the bar, right? That's not good. We want to push ourselves above and beyond what we think is possible. And if we're going to do that, let's start at the top. Let's shoot for the stars. And if we land up in the clouds, we win it. Okay? Comparing yourself drains you of your creative power. Each time you compare yourself or seek the approval of others, you give away your authentic power to consciously create your life. The more you give it away, the more insecure you feel when you are more concerned about what others think than what you think. Then you effectively stop thinking for yourself. You neutralize your thought power. Irrespective of whether you are aware of it or not, everything you experience in the visible outer world of the physical realm has its origin in the invisible inner world of the mental realm. It is your own thoughts that you should be focusing on and not the outward appearance that they or someone else's thoughts have produced. There can be no more compelling reason why you must think for yourself. If you want to have any real power over your own life, then you had better start making up your own mind. Okay? Does that make sense? Comparing yourself drains you of your creative power because you're not thinking for yourself. I'm comparing myself to somebody else's thoughts of what they think success is. So I'm only copying what they're doing. I want to have my own original thoughts. I want to use somebody who's achieved something as inspiration. Like, oh wow, that's possible. You can think something, take an action, and achieve it. It's possible. Now, what do I want to do? I wanted to do it the way I want to do it. And I know it's possible because I saw somebody else do it. How to stop comparing yourself. Since comparing yourself to others is such a pointless and self-sabotaging exercise, the obvious question then is, how do you stop it? The first step is to actually acknowledge that you do compare yourself. Guilty. It may seem obvious, but you cannot change a problem if you do not acknowledge its existence. Okay, that goes for everything. You can't try to get more money if you don't accept that the money that you haven't been a good steward of. That's not how the universe works. We have to acknowledge that there's an issue, dig into the soil, pull the weed out, pull the root weed out, replace it with something a little more prosperous, a little more abundant way of thinking, and then let that be the energy that we give off, and then we will see those fruits come to bear. The first step is to actually acknowledge that you do compare yourself. All right? It may seem obvious, but you cannot change a problem if you do not acknowledge its existence. This is not about blaming yourself, okay, or feeling bad that you compare yourself, but rather it is just a matter of fact of recognition of an unwanted habit that you intend to overcome. Endeavor to become aware of your thoughts and catch yourself in the process of comparing yourself. Once you understand the root cause of your need to compare yourself, then stopping will be effortless. So the stuff that we talk about, guys, it's not about shaming ourselves, pointing fingers at people, blaming ourselves. It's about identification. We want to identify what's going on, right? Because a belief, it literally is just a thought that we keep thinking, right? And some of us have built lives based on a false premise, right? So and some of our beliefs actually serve us, right? I want to be grateful. That's a belief that I carry. I should always be grateful. It serves me. A thought that I compare myself to others, it don't really serve me. It kind of keeps me in a space of envy and jealousy, and I don't feel good. You know what? I'm going to work to remove that. So I applaud myself for the good ones, but I don't admonish myself for the ones that are not so good. I just work to remove them. So it's not about blaming. It's not about judgment. Don't beat yourself up if this is something that you do. It's about identifying, acknowledging, and then let's work to remove it. That's why we're here. The root cause of comparing yourself, behind your every need to compare yourself to others, is a warped sense of self-worth based on a definition of success that you never chose in the first instance, and a not so solid self-esteem. Herein lies the solution to stop comparing yourself once and for all. Building your self-worth and a solid self-esteem that cannot be disturbed by outside factors and opinions. Okay, we've talked a lot about that already. Doing so will give you the freedom to be the only person you were ever meant to be, yourself. Okay, I'm going to read that again. Herein lies the solution to stop comparing yourself once and for all. You got to build up your self-worth, your self-value, your self-love. That's why we see so much chaos in the world today, because so many people lack self-love, self-esteem, self-worth, self-value, right? So if I don't have self-love, if at my essence I hate myself, it's nothing for me to harm you. It's nothing for me to rob you of your right to pursuit of happiness. It's nothing. I hate myself. So why would I care about you? Why would I not, if I don't care whether I live or die, why would I care if you do? So when we see the protests and the riots and the same race on same race crime, and speaking because of my skin complexion, black on black crime, it's about self-love. Overall, as a people, we don't love ourselves. If I love myself, then you're a reflection of me. If I love me, I love you. If I dislike me, if I hate me, I'm going to hate you. Because it's like looking at myself. So it'd be nothing for me to take somebody's life or to harm somebody's property or to rape some woman or to abuse some child or to commit some crime. I hate myself. So self-love is the key to a lot of stuff. We're talking about comparing yourself to others, but it's the key to a lot of stuff. Self-love will heal a lot of society's ills. Self-love, self-esteem, self-value, self-worth, self-respect. Okay? A positive self-image. Building your self-worth and a solid self-esteem that cannot be disturbed by outside factors and opinions. Doing so will give you the freedom to be the only person that you were ever meant to be, and that's yourself. Be you. You are unique. You matter. You matter. God created you. Be your own unique self. Nobody can ever do you. Nobody. So stop trying to copy other people and look a certain way and be like, you know, we can aspire to take on characteristics that we emulating somebody else, but I'm not trying to copy the person. You got some qualities that I admire. You know what? I would like to take those on, but I'm still doing it the way Brooklyn does it. Be your own unique self. That's the only person that you're ever going to excel at being is you. In a nutshell, comparing yourself to others is one of the most self-limiting and pointless things you can do as you set out to create the success you want. Comparing yourself is at the back of your biggest insecurities, from not feeling good enough to resenting the success of others. It sets you up for mediocrity rather than real success. It drains you of your authentic inner power, and it neutralizes the creative power of your own thoughts. Building your self-worth based on your own definition of success and developing a solid self-esteem will free you to stop comparing yourself to others once and for all. Okay? This is not a super long video, but it's a very, very key component that we all need to understand. Stop comparing yourself to others. Parents, stop comparing your kids to each other. Oh, Johnny, you need to be more like Reggie. Don't do that. Don't do that. Do not do that. You are planting seeds that you're going to regret years later on. Each kid is their own unique individual self. Stop judging them on the same criteria. Adults, stop comparing yourself to other people. Now, I'm not sitting here saying that accomplishment isn't sexy. Accomplishment is. It's attractive. I'm not going to sit here and say that. But your accomplishments doesn't define your worth. It's just something that you decided to do. Yes, it's attractive. Yes, it's very, To be accomplished, that's why we're here, to go out and produce and try and conquer, for lack of better words, all the things that we set out to do, but it doesn't make me more of a human being than the next person. It just makes me somebody who decided to do something that somebody else did. But I'm no better than the next person because I've accomplished things. So by all means, go out and accomplish. Do anything and everything that you've ever wanted to do. But don't define that as your worth, as your self-love, your self-value, because you've made a couple of dollars. Now all of a sudden you're, what? Stop it. Stop it. Stop comparing yourself. Stop comparing yourself. Your life will be so much better if you stop comparing yourself to other people. Right? Learn to appreciate and acknowledge other people's wins, other people's accomplishment, other people's success. Like energy attracts like energy. Who are your 5 closest friends? That's who you are. You've heard it before. Okay? Stop comparing yourselves. Work on your self-love, your self-esteem, your self-value, your self-worth, your self-respect, your self-image. I'm going to continue to do that for myself. Thanks for listening. I love you. Peace. Brooklyn, Mclinn.